Today we're going to take a closer look at Blaziken, and exactly how good is Blaziken in the Battle Stadium singles format. Turns out, it's pretty good. Blaziken is most well known for its ability Speed Boost. Unlike other speed boosters such as Scolipede and Ninjask, Blaziken is unique in it that it is also able to pose a real offensive threat. It's got strong stab moves such as Close Combat and Flare Blitz, and it's also got some amazing coverage move pool, and as well as boosting options in Sword Stance and Bulk Up. Therefore, before I kind of categorize these Blaziken sets into three main categories, it's important to note that it's not really possible to list out every single possible Blaziken set. Just the sheer number of possible moves, items, and everything just makes that pretty difficult. So I am going to focus on main three branches of what Blaziken typically uses, but it's possible for you to mix and match. So now that out of the way, let's look at the Baton Pass set in front of us right now. While it is possible for a Baton Pass Blaziken to use other items such as a resist berry like a Koba berry, Shucka berry, and such, or if you're at it, you could also use Focus Sash on a Baton Pass Blaziken to basically survive anything. Blaziken, with the dedicated Baton Pass set, really likes the ability to pass +2/+2 boosts with the weakness policy. And in order to activate that weakness policy, they will often have strongly invested bulk on both sides. And also bulk up lets it survive strong hits on the physical side. It is possible to use other coverage moves other than Earthquake, of course, but Earthquake is pretty common in this type of set because getting that special defense boost also pretty relevant. In that way, you can basically boost about every relevant stat in the game. You can boost your attack, defense, special defense, and speed, and that means that Blaziken can pass to basically any sweeper that you want. Of course, the most common recipient tend to be stored power sweepers such as Cresselia and Latias, but you can definitely get creative there. So you can put a Cresselia on your team, but you're not forced to bring Cresselia and Blaziken every game, because of the team preview clause. So you can try to use the Blaziken Cresselia combo as much as possible. But if they have hard counters such as, I don't know, Tyranitar, that's something that can really stop the Cresselia from sweeping with stored power, then you can try passing to another sweeper. The second set tries to take the game in its own hands as opposed to supporting another sweeper. Blaziken, once it gets the Sword Stance boost, is really strong, hits really hard, and it's actually able to further boost its damage on top of the Sword Stance boost with the Max Flare setting the Sun, Max Knuckle, obviously boosting another stage of attack. I guess the big problem, of course, is actually getting there. So this type of Blaziken set is going to need a lot of team support in order to safely give it setup opportunities. Koba Berry is relevant because it has the ability to have damage from Max Airstream, a really strong move. It's basically good on everything, and on top of that, it counteracts the most broken thing about Blaziken, which is the speed boost. And often Blaziken will be forced to use a max guard in order to counterplay Max Airstream, even the Koba Berry ones. So, for example, if you are using a Koba Berry Blaziken, you want to kind of go for a Max Flare against the opposing Zapdos, for example, something that will use Airstream against Blaziken, and you want to kind of max guard on the next turn. So because if you don't do that, the Zapdos +1 Zapdos faster than +1 Blaziken, and you'll get beaten to the punch. Other coverage moves are there as options. Earthquake, also a pretty decent move. Rock Slide, you got a lot of options, but Thunder Punch is the most common because it hits Top of Finny, which resists both of your fighting and fire type stab. And your third option is a special sweeper set. So you are going for immediate damage with the set, which is definitely surprising because all other variants of Blaziken rely on some kind of setup, either a Swords Dance setup to clean up, or some kind of bulk up weakness policy type of setup in order to baton pass out. So this immediate damage, especially on the special side, if they bring in a physical wall, then that could really go bad for your opponent. Um, so actually, there are other options. I did list Fire Blast as kind of the generic fire type stab move, but it is definitely possible to use something like Blast Burn, which is kind of an all-out option to maximize their max flare base power as much as possible. Because once this Blaziken kind of runs out of its Dynamax, it's definitely less useful. So let's take a look at these two teams that we're going to be using today. The first has the Swords Dance set, the second is a Baton Pass variant. Both of them are built by other players. I will put the link in the description. I figured that it's not too terribly sustainable for me to pump out 6 teams every week. So the plan is kind of mix in teams that I built with teams from other blogs. My first game is against Getter. He is a really high rated opponent. He was really high rated when I was recording this. And on top of that, he's placed top 10 a couple of times in prior seasons. But I do know a little bit about his team in advance, also about how he plays. So I'm gonna take a bit of a easy way out here. And I know that he doesn't like to bring Dracozolt against Zapdos, even though it seems like that seems to be his main out against Zapdos. This type of really bulky teams tend to have some kind of dedicated flowcharts. And I've heard from sources that he doesn't bring Dracozolt even against Zapdos teams. So I am gonna basically ignore that Dracozolt in the team preview, and I bring both Zapdos and Blaziken. And if he brings Dracozolt, that could turn out really badly, but I am just going all out here and hoping that my opponent doesn't just randomly change up his game plan. I go into the top of Finny first, which, I mean, if he were to lead with the Dracozolt, I would get some relevant chip damage on it with the Moonblast, but I mean, I don't think that will be enough to save me from this poor matchup. But he goes Rotom lead, and he goes for the Thunderbolt, and just knocks out my Tapu Fini in one. So that makes me think that has to be Specs Rotom. Because otherwise, Rotom is not going to one-hit KO Tapu Fini just like that. So, knowing that, I am just going to go into my Zapdos. Because my Blaziken doesn't have Protect, it just has Swords Dance. And it's going to be slower than his Rotom that goes for, I don't know, like a Thunderbolt. And that could end up going really badly. And he could also Dynamax on top of that, so if I close combat, Rotom Dynamaxes and lives, that would be like game over for me. So I'm gonna go into my Zapdos, and this Thunderbolt should be able to take out the Rotom. And definitely, if he has Dracozolt, he goes into it there, but he doesn't. So that means that I can kind of proceed naturally with this game plan here. And I also do have Life Orb, so it is possible that he didn't expect that Thunderbolt to kill, because non-Life Orb was not going to kill. So, and he brings out Porygon too, and that seems to be his response to Zapdos. So that does work out in the short term, but I do have the Blaziken in the back. And yeah, he just goes for the Recover, which makes me think that he isn't even especially defensive on this Porygon too. Because if he were specially defensive, he would live 2 max airstreams. So there is no reason for him to just spam recover like that and potentially waste turns here. I do go for the second Eerie Impulse, but looking back, this is definitely a misplay because he could have had Thunder Wave on this Porygon 2, for example, and I mean, Thunder Wave does have good synergy with long-term setup sweepers such as Clefable and Reuniclus in the back. If you those things really necessitate that you kind of keep hitting it really hard to keep it off its footing, and a single paralysis could really ruin that game plan. So he goes for the Trick Room as opposed to the Thunder Wave though, so I am not gonna get burned for that. And he switches out. So I went for the Flare Blitz because I figured that with the Trick Room it might be Reuniclus in the back. But it turns out he has the Clefable, so I'm gonna be able to at least get some nice damage. Does way over 50%. I get the burn on it, which is really nice. Not because the burn damage is gonna do a ton, but because I'm gonna be able to see what ability he has. So I mean, I guess if he weren't unaware, that Flare Blitz would have just KO'd him right off the bat. So I am checking my Trick Room count. So I want to Dynamax at a moment so that I can kind of wait a little bit so that when I still have the Dynamax on the final turn of Trick Room. So I'm gonna go for one more Flare Blitz here. And that means that on the next turn, the Trick Room counter will be 2. That means that I can max Flare and max Guard, and that way he will have no way to recover out because I guess I could go for max Guard and max Flare and max Flare, and that means that the way Trick Room ending works out, he will be forced to go first on the final turn of Trick Room. I'll be able to max Flare, and then when Trick Room runs out, I go for the max Flare again, and that 2 max Flares in a row is really difficult for him to tank it. So at this point, but I am gonna go for the max Flare first, because I'm a bit scared if he is gonna Dynamax, that could potentially knock out my Blaziken, because I did take a lot of chip damage. I did consider going for Thunder Punch as opposed to Flare Blitz, but I thought it'd be just fine to go for the Flare Blitz then, and then go for the Dynamax one turn early. And he goes for the Dynamax of his own, and that is perfect for me because that means that he cannot use the Moonlight. And me going for Max Flare has the ability to boost my max Flare damage, but also it comes at the cost of boosting his Moonlight recovery. So if he were to kind of spam Moonlight like that, that could have been kind of iffy. But he Dynamaxes now, and he does 170 to 74. So if I didn't Dynamax, I would have definitely died there. I called that turn correctly, and this is going to be great. And this is the final turn of Trick Room, and I can just max Guard away. And if I max Guard, and there's not very little he can do in terms of actually predicting me. If he goes for the, switch out into Porygon 2, that could be a bit awkward because he's gonna have to go for, he's gonna be able to go for Trick Room if he survives, but at the same time, that's still gonna do a ton of damage. Clefable is gonna be still left at really low, and Zapdos has the ability to just kind of clean up from there. Yep. And I'm gonna be able to catch him on the stay in, and I'm just gonna go for the max Flare. He goes for the max Guard though, smartly, and that means that he's gonna stall out my final turn of Dynamax. And actually, it's not even that bad of a thing for me, because that means that I get to use close combat and not max Knuckle, which will obviously do a lot more damage to the Porygon too. And here I'm using my Dynamax turn animations ending to kind of make time to do my calcs. And it turns out that my close combat will just kill naturally. So if I went for the Flare Blitz, that could have... I mean, he could go into Porygon to kill me on recoil. And I don't know, there could be ways out for him. And I don't really want to calc more than that. I just see that close combat will kill this Clefable even with max physical defense. And the game is over. I am able to take this guy down. Of course, me knowing his game plan in advance definitely helped. I might not be able to get away with this type of pick on the second time. It did lose 3-0 to Dracozolt, but I was able to pull off this win here. He was going to forfeit, and good game. And this time I swapped over to my Baton Pass Blaziken team. And I'm going to be able to kind of set up the Blaziken with the support from the Grimmsnarl. The Grimmsnarl tricks Full Incense, and that means that Blaziken can go first and activate its defense boosting abilities, I guess moves, such as Bulk Up and Max Quake. Also Max Flare, because if that Urshifu is Water Urshifu, that means that I can just go for the Max Flare and just cripple its damage output, activate my weakness policy, and that is going to be really devastating for my opponent. And I'm going to basically pick the standard mode for this Blaziken team. The thing with Baton Pass teams like this, definitely they have a game plan in advance that you want to follow unless you see a strong counter pick against that game plan. And I didn't see one, so I'm going to be leading the Grimmsnarl, Blaziken, Cresselia combination, which is going to be my main win condition. Now I'm going to try to set this up, and I'm going to first go for the trick. Of course, even though Urshifu is a physical attacker, I can't really go for the Reflect. Its signature move will always crit and do a lot of damage through the screens. So I basically only get 2 turns. I can go for the trick, and I can go for the Spirit Break. So either order kind of works. And I go for the trick first, kind of just to kind of see what my opponent is gonna do. And he turns out to be scarfed on his Urshifu Rapid Strike, which is a very common set. And I'm going to be able to just kind of spam Spirit Break. And that also will help my Blaziken set up if he were to kind of try to pivot around, switch out to a special attacker, which could have been possible. But he doesn't do that, he just gets the KO right away. I mean, understandable. Grimmsnarl is kind of a pain, but I think he definitely could have tried to play around that by keeping it alive, especially because I was tricked Scarf. So that wasn't actually the best case scenario for me. One could argue that I should have Spirit Breaked first and then tricked second in order to deny any awkward positions with the Scarf just like that, especially because Scarf is such a common item on Urshifu Rapid Strike. But so I think that was definitely a misplay, even though it didn't really end up affecting the game whatsoever because my opponent didn't take advantage of it. So here I am guaranteed faster with the Blaziken. Even though I'm not too invested in my speed, doesn't matter, I am going to go first because of their lagging tail. Actually, we tricked him the Lax Incense instead of the lagging tail. And the reason for using Lax Incense instead of lagging tail is kind of funny because lagging tail, the item name is a bit more clear on what exactly it does. I mean, like, it is a lagging tail, literally, so you're gonna move second. But lag sentence isn't, it's not super obvious on what exactly it does, so your opponent might kind of make a mistake or something like that. So that was the explanation that I heard why lag sentence is always better. Kind of funny, but so yeah, I am going to go for the max flare. My opponent lives, which is actually a pretty bad thing for him, because that means that he is gonna use the surging strikes against my weakness policy, Blaziken in rain, in sun. So that did almost no damage, and I'm gonna get +2/+2, and also I have a lot of speed boost now, and I'm also gonna grab a special defense boost on top of all that. So my Cresselia looking pretty nice here. I can just grab some easy KOs, honestly, as long as I am allowed to go for the stored powers here. So I guess there's a couple of ways out for my opponent. He could bring Mimikyu, and if he has some way out, that Mimikyu would definitely be it. But he doesn't even bring out Mimikyu, so I am just gonna go for the max flare with the weakness policy boost, and on top of that I get the sun boost, so this is gonna be doing a ton, unless he just max guards my final Dynamax turn, which is very possible. Kind of expecting him to do that, and yep, he does exactly that. But that means that I, at the end of this turn, will stay at +3 speed with Blaziken. And even if he airstreams against this Blaziken, which I don't see why he wouldn't, that means that my Cresselia is going to be +3 against my opponent Zapdos having +1. So that means that my Cresselia will be able to go for faster Calm Minds and faster Moonlights. And that means that I can set up way better. And yeah, let's see how much Cresselia actually takes from this max airstream. So I have only one special defense boost, but that means that I'm gonna take basically nothing from this airstream. So this honestly looks pretty over. There are ways out, of course. If he has, well, Mimikyu can't even beat this Cresselia 1v1 anymore because he needs the Swords Dance to get the damage to bust through Cresselia. But if he goes for the Swords Dance, I'm just gonna store power twice and KO it. And here I'm just gonna go for another Calm Mind, which would really dampen their damage from max airstream, and also boost my damage against a potential AV Excadrill. And Excadrill is the Pokemon that comes out, and honestly, I'm a bit scared. Not because Cresselia is gonna lose against Excadrill, but the way he brought it out makes me really think that he might have Horndrill, and that is gonna be bad news bears. I have a lot of boosts, but none of that matters if he was to land a Horndrill. I don't have Substitute to play around the Horndrill, so I'm gonna go for a stored power. That's way over half. He does have the Horndrill, and oh my god, I dodge it. So good for me, and he is leftover, so that is like a really specially defensive Excadrill with like leftovers. It might even have protect, like that kind of Excadrill set is used to counter Zapdos. But I'm gonna take the win here against this team. Good game. Thank you guys all for watching. See you next time. Bye.